Coming to paperback and e-readers, John Haynes, Godbreaker. The man who rules the world takes on the Asgardian god of thunder in this action-packed, all-new John Haynes series adventure. Pre-order your copy of John Haynes, Godbreaker at online booksellers today. A couple of weeks ago, New York Mayor Eric Adams said that there's no more room for asylum seekers in New York City. Now, this is a complete about-face for New York Mayor Eric Adams, who stated at the beginning of his term as mayor of New York that New York City would remain a sanctuary city, and those who were illegally crossing the border could come to the city to seek asylum as they were waiting for their papers to be processed by the Department of Immigration and Naturalization Services. However, after having to just deal with only 40,000 of these migrants or asylum seekers, New York Mayor Eric Adams is singing a different tune, and now he wants to say that there's no more room for asylum seekers in New York City. Now, when I take a critical examination of New York Mayor Eric Adams' about-face, it really reminds me of a song that I used to listen to back in the mid-'80s, Houdini's Big Mouth. And in the Houdini song, Big Mouth, there's a lyric where the rapper talks about a person having a mouth that writes a check that they're behind can't cash. And I believe New York Mayor Eric Adams' Big Mouth wrote a check that is behind can't cash. And now that doesn't have the money to be able to pay for taking care of all of these migrants, now he's talking about how he wants to close the door on all of these migrants. Now, this whole situation as related to many of these migrants or asylum seekers started way back during the days of the Trump presidency. And during the days of the Trump presidency, the previous mayor, Bill de Blasio, went and opened up his big mouth in an effort to try to virtue signal to all of the social justice types by announcing that New York City would be a sanctuary city and that all of those who illegally crossed the border of the United States would be able to come to New York City and find refuge in New York City. Now, this was done because Bill de Blasio wanted to virtue signal that he was not a racist like Donald Trump, and he wanted to show everybody in those social justice circles how he was just so tolerant and open to those who were willing to break laws of our country in order to gain refuge in our country. Now, this whole virtue signal was not only done by Bill de Blasio here in New York, it was also done by Lori Lightfoot in Chicago and the previous mayor of Los Angeles. And many of these Blue Party mayors in New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, and Washington, D.C. wanted to go out here and make a big virtue signal and opened up their mouths, wrote a big check about how they were going to be able to spend money to take care of all of these migrants or asylum seekers. And as they were writing this check, they were hoping that no one would want to go out here and cash that check. Now, as Bill de Blasio's term ended in an ignominious fashion, New York Mayor Eric Adams was elected, and Eric Adams started already out on a bad foot because instead of him looking to lead the city of New York in a new direction that voters had hoped, what he did was continue to follow the lead of his Blue Party constituents and continue to get along with those in the Blue Party. And instead, what he did that really alienated a lot of people was continue to enforce jab mandates in New York City in order to virtue signal to more of those higher up in the Blue Party. And he also continued to announce that New York City would remain a sanctuary city. And as Eric Adams continued to announce that New York City would continue to be a sanctuary city, he went out here just trying to be a big-time social guy and never thought that once somebody would call him on his declaration of New York City being a sanctuary city, and he never thought that he would actually have to deal with any sort of immigrants coming to New York City all the way from the Texas border. However, Greg Abbott, who was dealing with a just deluge of millions of individuals a day at the Texas border, decided to stop listening to the virtue signaling and call many in these blue party cities on their bluff. And he decided to start sending many of these migrants or asylum seekers to many of these big blue cities like Washington, D.C., New York, and Chicago, and Los Angeles. And many of these politicians, like Eric Adams, they stuck their chest out and said, yes, we can handle all of these individuals. However, at 40,000 migrants or asylum seekers, Eric Adams started to buckle under the pressure. And again, we're only talking about 40,000 of the alleged 1 to 2 million individuals at the Texas border, and Eric Adams started to buckle under the pressure, stating that the city didn't have the resources to be able to feed, clothe, and house most of these migrants or asylum seekers, and could not handle being able to take care of all of these individuals who were overrunning places like Manhattan. And this was just, again, 40,000 individuals. And we had Eric Adams starting to complain, oh, we can't handle all of these individuals. And as he was trying to deal with the financial situation as related to taking care of 40,000 individuals who are non-citizens, he began to beg for help from New York Governor Kathy Hochul, and he also began to beg for help from President Joe Biden, asking for $2 billion in order to be able to take care of just 40,000 migrants. And this really showed how weak a leader your Eric Adams actually is, because while he went out here and stuck out his chest in a very arrogant fashion, hoping to pander to all of the social justice members of the Blue Party and virtue signal, he went out here and was bragging about how the city would be able to take care of these individuals. However, as his big mouth was writing a check, he wasn't looking at the fiscal situation of New York City, a city that was in financial crisis even before he was elected due to the excessive spending of then Mayor Bill de Blasio. So he wasn't thinking critically, because all he wanted to do was follow in the footsteps of his fellow Blue Party members, and was hoping to pander to people like Joe Biden, looking for him to give him some favor, and hoping that he would be able to get $2 billion easy from Joe Biden. But it's clear to me Eric Adams doesn't understand the subtle politics transpiring around him, nor does he understand the basics of political process. Because while you may ask Joe Biden for $2 billion, getting $2 billion through Congress is not an easy thing, and it's not easy even if you have both houses of Congress, which is what many of the Blue Party had before the 2022 midterms. It's very hard to get money allocated for resources, and this is something Eric Adams wasn't thinking about critically, because he was in his feelings and looking to virtue signal, and because he was in his feelings hoping to gain social currency and brownie points with higher up members in the Blue Party like Kathy Hochul and Joe Biden, he couldn't see that taking on these asylum seekers was not a good policy move, because again, it takes years just to get any sort of allocation through Congress, and it takes years to get any sort of money through, because money has to go through committees, money has to go through the House and the Senate, and it may take years before that money goes through any sort of bureaucracy, and before it reaches the state level, and after it reaches the state level, it has to go to the city level. So a request for $2 billion today would take 3 to 4 years possibly to get to New York City, and by that time, New York City would be even more overwhelmed by many of these migrants or asylum seekers. So this is a nightmare scenario. Unfortunately, New York Mayor Eric Adams wasn't thinking about this at all because, again, he uses the job of mayor to clout chase and get social currency with others higher up on the white social ladder instead of looking to lead New York City in a direction where the city can return back to solvency and be a place where tourists and individuals want to invest. And people don't want to invest in New York City at this point because the city is filled with crime, and it's also filled with lots of individuals like these asylum seekers who are just sitting out here doing nothing all day. And again, all because many politicians are in their feelings and looking to virtue signal about Donald Trump and still are caught up in what I call a Trump obsession. And now they're sitting there saying, oh, we have no more room for migrants. And I have to wonder, do they have no more room for migrants because Eric Adams can no longer virtue signal and say that New York City is a sanctuary city? Or is he just saying that there's no more room because the city cannot fiscally care for all of these migrants or asylum seekers due to the fact that the city was already running in the red even before this whole situation due to years of mismanagement under the de Blasio administration? I'm wondering, how is it that you say that you have no more room? I mean, you were bragging about how much room you had, even though the city was speculated to have a $100 billion deficit. You were bragging about how much money you had, and I believe the only reason why he was bragging about this was because he was creating a covert contract with Kathy Hochul and Joe Biden, hoping that they would cover the cost of all of these migrants or asylum seekers, and that's not how a person who's a good leader governs effectively. No, a person who's a good leader who can govern effectively counts the cost before they go out here and open their mouth, because they know they will be judged by the very words that they say, and that's why they know I've got to watch my mouth before I write a check my behind can't cash. And when I look at Eric Adams, he's basically written a check with his mouth that his behind is unable to cash at this point. And now that he's not able to cash it at this point, what New York's George Jefferson wants to do is he wants to go chasing Mr. and Mrs. Whitendale, Joe Biden, and Kathy Hochul, hoping they will cover the cost of all of the expenses he has made as related to trying to house most of these migrants or asylum seekers, trying to honor the words of another man, Bill de Blasio. And he could have avoided all this by taking the lead and setting a direction for himself. He could have done this with the jab mandates that kept many New Yorkers out of work for 11 months, and he could have done it with these asylum seekers, but no, looking to bootlick and gain favor with those whites higher up in the blue party, he went on to create these dysfunctional policies which hampered the revenue of New York City and also led to us having to stuck with a bunch of individuals who basically are just here and are just being used as political pawns. That's what we're seeing here with New York Mayor Eric Adams, who is running New York City similar to the way George Jefferson ran Jefferson Cleaners. And George Jefferson, while he was on TV, the whole joke was that George Jefferson, while he had gotten success on a fluke, didn't know how to maintain success because all he was used to doing was running jive hustles and looking to chase white folks for approval in order to cover the cost of those jive hustles he wanted to participate in. And what's really not funny is the fact that Eric Adams is like a modern day George Jefferson, and this George Jefferson spends most of his time chasing Mr. Whitendale, Joe Biden, for his approval, licking his boots, hoping to get his approval, not understanding that he's losing the approval and support of many New Yorkers who elected him into office, and many more just don't see him as competent at this point because the way he mishandled the jab mandates and left many New Yorkers unemployed, and also went out here and continued to support a asylum policy that was destined to fail. He shows that he's just not a leader, that he is a follower, and he's a follower who's following the vision of a dysfunctional former mayor. And while he's sitting there looking to say that he wants to be a leader, we really don't see him leading anything except going to clout chase for social circles and looking to go to places like the Apollo, looking to get attention from people, but not looking to gain attention by showing that he can lead, and not looking to show that he's somebody that needs to be respected. Because when you go out here and say, oh, there's no more room for asylum seekers after saying that you're open, you're basically crying uncle, and you're crying uncle showing us all that you're not fit for office, because a man who is fit for office, he's going to go out here and lead. He's going to count the cost and say, okay, that was the previous administration. They said that they wanted to make it a sanctuary city. We're not making it a sanctuary city because we don't have the resources, we don't have the space, we don't have the way to take care of these individuals, and we can't really take care of these individuals because if we do this, we're going to enable people to believe that they can break our laws. I mean, if you're supposed to be so pro-cop and so pro-law, then why support those who break the laws of this country by entering illegally? Critical question I would like to ask New York Mayor Eric Adams: why continue to support those who break the law as related to federal law, and then want to say you want to try to fight crime on a state level? Just completely diametrically opposing positions, but that's what happens when you have weak leadership, because consistent leadership says, okay, crime is wrong for people to commit on the local level, and it's also illegal for them to commit on the federal level, and neither individual should be allowed an opportunity to break the laws of this country. Yes, you want to come into the country legally, and an illegal person, again, if they'll break our laws to come into the country, they're going to break the law to commit crimes, and this was seen in a possible case as related to so-called asylum seekers stealing from a Macy's warehouse here in New York. Again, you have people committing if they violate one law, they'll break another. And what's really troubling to me about New York Mayor Eric Adams is, again, his mouth wrote a check, his behind can't cash, and the whole Blue Party is embarrassed by him, but he's still thinking that he's on the right side. And even though your Kathy Hochul wants to come in and give the $1 billion in the New York budget to continue to take care of these individuals, again, it just shows how New York is being run in a dysfunctional fashion, because there's nobody leading the city, nobody leading the state. Everybody's following a line, and they're trying to toe a line that is sinking the state and leading to people leaving the state and moving out of the state, because the state of the union is inconsistent and incoherent, all due to failed leadership that mouths write checks that their behinds can't cash, and because these people don't count the cost. They don't see how what they're trying to virtue signal and trying to push is something they can't afford, and you can't afford it on an economic level, nor can you afford it on a moral level, because if you allow people to break federal laws, they will break state laws, and if they break state laws, they'll break city laws. And what's really troubling to me is that everybody can find money for illegal immigrants, but we've got 100,000 homeless individuals here in New York City, and we've got a lot of our veterans, people who serve this country, and we don't make those people priority. And that's really troubling to me, because, again, a man or a woman who fought for this country should be put first. I mean, we used to do this in the 50s with the GI Bill and all of the homes we gave many of our soldiers after World War II. But after Vietnam, we've thrown up a middle finger at our veterans and said, screw you, because many politicians would want to virtue signal and say, oh, I want to get brownie points for votes and I want to pander to people instead of showing leadership ability, because showing leadership ability would be going out here and looking out for our soldiers and many of the folks that wound up falling on hard times due to policies like the jab mandates here in New York City, which forced many people to not be able to work for 11 months. No, you should be looking out for those people first, because they lay the foundation for the tax base that allows your economy to grow and be strong. But instead of supporting those people, what they want to do is create a covert contract with these asylum seekers, hoping to eventually get the votes of their children instead of trying to get the votes of America's children by taking care of our best and brightest Americans like our soldiers and many of our working class folks. That's something Eric Adams doesn't seem to connect the dots on. It was those people who voted for him, and by making them last, they may make him last in 4 years, because he's already showing us that there's no room for him as mayor because he doesn't know how to lead like a man. Now, if you want to see me make more videos like this, you can donate to my Patreon, my PayPal, or my Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. And if you want to pick up some of my positive black fiction on the SJS Direct imprint, like the ISIS series, the E-Steam series, the John Haynes series, and the books of the Spinsterella trilogy, and books like The Thetas and Eternal Night, or my men's issues books like the Simp series and the Man Crisis and the Woman Crisis, you can find all these books on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find them at other online booksellers like Smashwords, the iBook Store, and Google Play. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback, John Haynes at Death's Door. The man who rules the world takes on the Greek god of death in this action-packed John Haynes series adventure. Pick up your copy of John Haynes at Death's Door at Amazon.com and other online booksellers everywhere.